Hi, my name is Katie, and today I am going to be taking the Java exam, so let us begin. Okay. You have a customer's class with a public string field size. In your program's main method, you create a customer's instance C1. What is printed as a result of running the call from the main method? Int measurement equals to size 3. System output prints size 1. You have a customer's class with a public string field size. In your program's main method, you create a customer's instance C1. How could you consolidate the switch statement, which is used to set sizes based on an int variable measurement? Switch measurement. Um, you encapsulating the clothing class price field by writing a set price method. The price field must always be set above a certain minimum. How would you implement this method? How would you look through the clothing dry items to calculate the total price of all items after tax? The clothing class has a public double price field price. Assume the double variables total and tax are already declared. Um, you have a customer class with a public string field name. What would you write in a main method to create the customer's instance set field on Pinky? Which is a valid print statement. You've created a clothing class with A is a public double field price. You've created two instances in your program's main method where item 1 is a jacket and item 2 is a shirt. You've also created a double for a tax rate in the main method. How would you accurately calculate the after tax total for two shirts and a jacket from the main method? Um, You have an array of clothing objects called items. The clothing class has a public field for size and price. You create a loop to calculate the total price of items. How would you add an if statement to ensure an item is only added to the total if it's the same size as the customer C1? Assume the customer's class has a public string field size. Okay. How would you declare the non-price field of a clothing class? The value of this field should never change. Accessing the field should not require you to create a clothing instance. Um, According to the schools, what libraries should you add to your project so that it can be deployed on the Oracle Cloud? That is hidden. A customer class contains an encapsulated array field of clothing items. How would you write a get item method in the customer's class to return these items? Customer class contains an encapsulated items. You write a method to calculate the average price of all clothing items owned by a customer. This method adds the price of all items, then divides the value by the number of items. If there are no items, your method will attempt to divide by zero. What type of exception must you guard against in the scenario? Given public customer string name int measurement, how would you initiate a customer object in this constructor? Really like this. Employee, department, employee. What exception occurs when you try adding an 11th employee to the department? Given clothing item 1 equal to clothing blue jacket, how would you declare the construction? When a class implements two comparable interface, what method must also be implemented? Okay, so you've created a clothing class along with two instance item 1 and item 2. How could you create a clothing array to store these two items? You've created a clothing class. You've overridden the toString method in the clothing class. From which class does this method originate as an object? How would you create a customers class with a string field name? How would you create a customers class? You've encapsulated the customer's class size field. The related set size method requires an integer argument. This argument is translated into a string, which is used to set the class size string field. You initiate a customer C1 in the main method, which is written in another class. How should you set the size of a customer C1 in the main method? You've encapsulated. Hmm. And